My parents asked my sister to share her wedding with me as I was pregnant. My sister got furious and came up to me and slapped me, saying, "See? Always trying to steal my spotlight. Why were you even born?" As I was struggling, my parents didn't even stop her, they just said, "She's angry and it's her right, so take it like a woman." Dad added, "Some people just need to learn about sharing special moments." And as that wasn't enough, she began shouting, "Just give up the baby and then you can join." When I refused, she went ahead and tried to attack my pregnant belly. I stayed quiet and saw my parents doing nothing, so I called 911 and left their lives in ruins. My name is Fiona, and this is the story of how one terrible day changed my entire family forever. To understand what happened, I need to give you some background. I'm 28, and my sister Maxine is 31. We've never been close, mainly because our parents always treated her like she could do no wrong while I was constantly criticized for everything. Maxine was the golden child, straight A's, perfect boyfriend, successful career in marketing. I was the disappointment, took longer to finish college, had a few failed relationships, and worked as a freelance graphic designer. When I met Dexter 2 years ago, everything changed. He's a teacher at the local elementary school, kind, patient, and everything I'd ever wanted in a partner. We got engaged last spring, and I was over the moon. For once, I felt like I was on the right track. Maxine had been engaged to her boyfriend Vance for about 6 months longer than me, and she'd been planning this elaborate wedding for over a year. 300 guests, designer dress, destination venue, the works. My parents were footing most of the bill, which came to about $85,000. Meanwhile, Dexter and I were planning something much smaller and more intimate for the following year. Everything changed when I found out I was pregnant in January. Dexter and I were thrilled, we'd been trying for a few months. When I told my parents, their reaction was complicated. Mom immediately started worrying about what people would think, while Dad just shook his head like I'd disappointed him again. "Well, this changes things," Mom said, wringing her hands. "Maxine's wedding is in June. People are going to notice." "So what?" I replied. "I'll be about 6 months along. I can still attend and be happy for her." That's when Dad dropped the bombshell that would destroy our family. "Actually, we've been thinking," he said, exchanging a look with Mom. "Maybe this could work out for everyone. Maxine's wedding is already planned and paid for. What if you two shared the ceremony? It would save money, and you wouldn't have to worry about planning anything while you're pregnant." I stared at them, speechless. Share Maxine's wedding? The one she'd been planning for over a year? "You can't be serious," I said. "It makes perfect sense," Mom chimed in. "Maxine's always been generous. I'm sure she'd be happy to include you." I knew Maxine well enough to know that wasn't true, but I also knew my parents well enough to know they'd already made up their minds. They'd probably already mentioned it to her. The next day, Mom called me. We talked to Maxine about sharing the wedding. "She's processing it. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight so we can all discuss it together?" I should have known it was a trap. When I arrived at my parents' house that evening, I could feel the tension immediately. Maxine was sitting at the kitchen table with her arms crossed, her face red with anger. Vance was there too, looking uncomfortable. "So," Dad said without preamble, "we need to figure out how to make this wedding work for both of our daughters." Maxine exploded. "Are you kidding me right now?" she screamed, jumping up from her chair. "This is my wedding. I've been planning it for over a year. I've picked out every detail, sent the invitations, booked everything. And now you want me to share it with her?" She pointed at me like I was something disgusting. "Maxine, please," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I never asked for this. If you don't want to share, that's fine. Dexter and I can wait." "Oh, sure." She snarled. "Make me look like the bad guy. You probably planned this whole thing." "Planned what? Getting pregnant?" "Yes. You've always been jealous of me. You can't stand that I'm successful, that I found Vance first, that I'm getting married in this beautiful ceremony. So you got yourself knocked up just to ruin it." "Maxine, that's not..." Before I could finish my sentence, Maxine's hand flew across my face in a sharp slap that echoed through the kitchen. The sting was immediate and shocking. "See? Always trying to steal my spotlight. Why were you even born?" I touched my cheek, feeling the heat from where she'd hit me. I looked at my parents, expecting them to intervene, to tell Maxine that hitting me was completely unacceptable. Instead, Mom just sighed. "She's angry and it's her right, so take it like a woman," Mom said, as if I was being unreasonable for being upset about being assaulted. Dad nodded in agreement. Some people just need to learn about sharing special moments. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My sister had just hit me, and my parents were defending her. Are you serious right now? I asked, my voice shaking. She just hit me. You're being dramatic, Maxine spat. It was barely a slap. I'm 7 months pregnant. Oh, please, she rolled her eyes. Don't act like you're made of glass just because you're having a baby. That's when she said something that chilled me to the bone. Actually, you know what? Just give up the baby and then you can join. Problem solved. The room went silent. Even Vance looked shocked. What did you just say? I whispered. You heard me. Give the baby up for adoption. Then you won't be pregnant for my wedding, and we can both get married like you wanted. Everyone wins. Maxine, I'm not giving up my baby. Why not? It's not like you can afford it anyway. You barely make any money with that little art hobby of yours. It's not a hobby, it's my career. And even if it wasn't, I would never give up my child. Maxine's face twisted with rage. Of course you won't. You just want to ruin everything for me. Well, if you won't get rid of it willingly, what happened next still gives me nightmares. Maxine lunged toward me with her hands outstretched, aiming directly for my pregnant belly. Instinctively, I threw my arms up to protect myself and stumbled backward. Maxine, stop, Vance shouted, finally finding his voice. But she didn't stop. She kept coming at me, her face contorted with fury. I'll solve this problem myself. She screamed. I managed to dodge her first attempt, but she came at me again. This time, I wasn't quick enough. Her hands made contact with my stomach and she started trying to hit and push my belly. Maxine, please. I begged, curling over to protect my baby. Please stop. I looked desperately at my parents, sure that this would finally make them intervene. But they just stood there, watching their oldest daughter try to hurt their grandchild. Stop her. I pleaded with them. Maxine, that's enough, Mom said half-heartedly, like she was asking her to stop playing music too loud. But Maxine didn't stop. She grabbed my shoulders and tried to knee me in the stomach. That's when something inside me snapped. I managed to break free from her grip and ran to the far side of the kitchen. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I'm at 428 Oak Street. My sister is trying to attack me and hurt my unborn baby. I'm 7 months pregnant. I need help. Ma'am, are you in immediate danger? Yes. She's still trying to get to me. Maxine had stopped attacking when she heard me on the phone, but she was still screaming obscenities at me. My parents were suddenly trying to calm her down, realizing that maybe things had gone too far. Fiona, hang up the phone, Dad said urgently. We can handle this as a family. No, I said, still talking to the dispatcher. I need someone to come here now. I don't feel safe. Within 10 minutes, 2 police officers arrived. Officer Hartley was a woman in her 40s, and Officer Johnson was a younger man. They separated us and took statements from everyone. I showed them the red mark on my face from where Maxine had slapped me, and I explained how she had tried to attack my pregnant belly. Vance corroborated my story, much to Maxine's fury. She's lying, Maxine insisted. I barely touched her. She's being dramatic because she wants attention. But when the officers talked to my parents, their story kept changing. First, they said they hadn't seen anything. Then they admitted Maxine had gotten a little upset but claimed it wasn't serious. Finally, when pressed, they admitted that Maxine had hit me but insisted I had provoked her. So you're saying your pregnant daughter provoked your other daughter into hitting her and trying to attack her stomach? Officer Hartley asked, her voice incredulous. Mom and Dad looked at each other uncomfortably. It was a misunderstanding, Dad said weakly. A misunderstanding that resulted in assault on a pregnant woman, Officer Johnson said. Ma'am, he said to me, would you like to press charges? I looked at my family. Maxine was still glaring at me with hatred. My parents looked worried now, but not about me, they were worried about Maxine getting in trouble. Yes, I said quietly. I want to press charges. Maxine was arrested for assault. As the officers led her away in handcuffs, she screamed at me that I was ruining her life, that her wedding was in 3 weeks, that I was destroying everything. My parents didn't speak to me as I left their house that night. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Maxine was charged with assault and battery, and because I was pregnant, there were additional charges related to endangering an unborn child. Her lawyer tried to get her a plea deal, but I refused to drop the charges. The story somehow made it to social media. One of Vance's friends had been at a bar when Vance called him, upset about what had happened. The friend posted about it online, and it went viral on TikTok and Twitter. #pregnant sister assault was trending for 3 days straight. The local news picked it up, woman arrested for attacking pregnant sister over shared wedding plans. Maxine's employer, a high-end marketing firm, saw the coverage and put her on administrative leave pending the outcome of the case. But the real fallout was just beginning. Maxine's wedding venue saw the news coverage and decided they didn't want the negative publicity associated with their business. They canceled her contract, keeping her deposit. The caterer, photographer, and florist all followed suit. In the span of a week, Maxine's dream wedding completely fell apart. Vance, to his credit, stood by the truth of what had happened, but the stress of everything caused problems in their relationship. He was horrified by Maxine's behavior and couldn't understand how my parents had just stood by and watched. "I don't know who I'm marrying anymore," he told Maxine during one of their fights, which she later recounted to Mom, who told me during one of her guilt-tripped phone calls. My parents were facing their own consequences. Mom worked as a receptionist at a dental office, and Dad was a manager at a local hardware store. When the story went viral, people in our small town recognized them. Dad's employer received several complaints from customers who didn't want to shop there anymore, and Mom faced uncomfortable questions from patients. Eventually, Dad's hours were reduced significantly, making it difficult for them to maintain their lifestyle, though Dad managed to keep working rather than retire early. But the worst part for them was the family fallout. My mom's sister, Aunt Linda, called them to express her disgust with how they'd handled the situation. My dad's parents, who were still alive and in their 80s, were appalled when they heard what had happened. "How could you let one daughter attack the other?" Grandma demanded during what Mom later described as a very difficult phone call. "And she was pregnant. What is wrong with you?" Other relatives started taking sides. My cousin Jake posted on Facebook about how families should protect each other, not stand by while someone gets hurt. My uncle Tom shared an article about domestic violence with a pointed comment about bystanders being just as guilty. During those 2 months while the court case was pending, my life became a nightmare in ways I hadn't expected. The stress of everything was taking a toll on my pregnancy. I was having trouble sleeping, constantly worried about Maxine or my parents showing up at my apartment. My doctor was concerned about my elevated blood pressure and put me on modified bed rest. Dexter was incredible during this time. He took on extra responsibilities at school so he could be home with me more often. He installed a security system in our apartment and made sure I was never alone for long periods. But I could see the stress wearing on him too. This wasn't how we'd imagined spending the months before our first child was born. The media attention was relentless at first. Local reporters kept calling, wanting interviews. A few national outlets picked up the story when it went viral on social media. I had people from daytime talk shows reaching out, wanting me to appear and tell my story. I declined everything, which only seemed to make them more persistent. The worst part was the online harassment. While many people were supportive, there was a vocal minority who blamed me for destroying my family and being vindictive. Maxine's friends and some extended family members started posting on social media about how I was ruining Maxine's life over nothing. One particularly nasty comment from Maxine's maid of honor, Jessica, read, "Fiona has always been jealous of Maxine. Now she's using her pregnancy to get attention and destroy Maxine's happiness. Maxine barely touched her. This is what happens when you call the cops over family drama instead of handling it like adults." These posts were screenshotted and shared widely, with people taking sides. The hashtag pregnant sister assault continued trending for days, with people debating whether I had overreacted. Some were calling me a hero for standing up to family abuse, others were calling me a vindictive sister who couldn't handle not being the center of attention. The harassment got so bad that I had to make all my social media accounts private and change my phone number twice. Dexter's school principal had to send a memo to staff asking them not to discuss the situation, as it was affecting Dexter's ability to do his job. My extended family was completely divided. My mom's parents and her sister Linda mostly sided with me, while some of her other relatives believed that family disputes should be handled privately. My dad's parents were firmly on my side and stopped speaking to him, saying they were ashamed of how he'd handled the situation. The family WhatsApp group chat, which had been active for years with updates about grandchildren, family events, and general news, completely fell apart. People started taking sides and arguing. Finally, my Uncle Tom, who was the admin, just deleted the entire group. I can't watch this family tear itself apart, he wrote in his final message. When you all decide to act like adults again, maybe we can rebuild this. Meanwhile, Maxine's behavior during this waiting period was making things worse for her. She couldn't seem to stop talking about the situation, even though her lawyer had advised her to stay quiet. She gave an interview to a local blogger, trying to tell her side of the story. In the interview, Maxine claimed that I had manipulated the situation to make her look bad. She said I had been provoking her for months about the wedding, and that our parents' suggestion to share the ceremony was actually my idea that I had convinced them to propose. Fiona has always been manipulative, Maxine told the blogger. She knew exactly which buttons to push to make me angry, and then she recorded everything to use against me later. This was completely false. I hadn't recorded anything, but the interview made Maxine look worse, not better. She came across as unrepentant and delusional, still blaming me for everything that had happened. The interview was shared widely online, and the comments were brutal. People pointed out that Maxine was still not taking responsibility for her actions, and that trying to hurt a pregnant woman was inexcusable regardless of the circumstances. Vance, who was still with Maxine at that point, was reportedly furious about the interview. According to mutual friends, he felt Maxine was making their situation worse by continuing to talk publicly about the case. The stress was affecting Maxine's mental health as well. She'd been fired from her job after the assault charges became public, and she was struggling to find new employment. Her wedding was obviously cancelled, her reputation was destroyed, and she was facing potential jail time. My parents tried to play mediator during this period, but their attempts only made things worse. They would call me periodically, asking me to be reasonable and consider dropping the charges. Think about Maxine's future, Mom pleaded during one particularly difficult phone call. A criminal record will follow her forever. Is that really what you want for your sister? What about my future? I asked. What about my baby's safety? Maxine tried to hurt my child, Mom. She said she was going to solve the problem by getting rid of my baby. How can you not understand how serious that is? She was emotional, Dad interjected. He was on speakerphone. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. She didn't just say things, Dad. She physically attacked me. She put her hands on my pregnant belly and tried to hurt my baby. It wasn't that serious, Mom said. You're making it sound worse than it was. This was the pattern with every conversation. No matter how clearly I explained what had happened, they minimized Maxine's actions and made excuses for her behavior. They seemed genuinely unable to understand that what Maxine had done was criminal assault, not just a family disagreement that got heated. During one particularly frustrating call, I decided to try a different approach. Mom, if you saw a stranger on the street attack a pregnant woman and try to hurt her baby, what would you think should happen to that person? That's different, she said immediately. How is it different? Because Maxine is family. Family handles things differently. So family members are allowed to assault each other? Of course not, but what? If it's wrong for a stranger to do it, why is it okay for Maxine to do it? You're twisting my words, Mom said, getting frustrated. I'm not saying it was okay. I'm saying it was a family situation that got out of hand, and families should be able to work through these things without involving outsiders. Mom, Maxine committed a crime. When someone commits a crime, there are consequences. It doesn't matter if they're family. You're being so cold, Fiona. This is your sister we're talking about. My sister who tried to hurt my unborn child. The conversation always ended the same way, with my parents hanging up in frustration and me feeling more isolated and hurt than before. The court case took 2 months to resolve. Maxine initially pled not guilty and claimed self-defense, saying I had provoked her. Her lawyer argued that it was a family dispute that had been blown out of proportion. But the prosecutor, a woman named Stella Park, took the case seriously. She argued that attacking a pregnant woman was particularly egregious, and that the fact that my own family had failed to protect me made it worse, not better. This isn't a family squabble, she told the court during one hearing. This is assault and battery on a pregnant woman by someone who specifically targeted her unborn child. The defendant's own statements, witnessed by multiple people, indicate she wanted to harm the victim's pregnancy. Vance testified about what he had seen. He was clearly uncomfortable, but he told the truth about Maxine's behavior and my parents' failure to intervene. Maxine kept trying to get to Fiona's stomach, he said quietly. She was saying things about getting rid of the baby. It was really scary. Maxine eventually took a plea deal. She pled guilty to assault and battery and received 6 months in jail, followed by 2 years of probation and mandatory anger management classes. She also had to pay for my medical expenses and attend counseling. The civil case took longer to resolve, but I also filed a lawsuit against Maxine for assault, emotional distress, and endangerment of my unborn child. I had to get a different lawyer for the civil case, since the criminal prosecutor couldn't represent me personally. My civil attorney, Jennifer Walsh, was confident we had a strong case. The fact that she specifically targeted your pregnancy makes this particularly serious, Jennifer explained. We can argue for significant damages based on the emotional trauma and the risk she posed to your baby. The civil case took longer to resolve, but eventually, Maxine was ordered to pay me $35,000 in damages. She didn't have that kind of money, so a payment plan was set up where her wages would be garnished over several years, and she had to liquidate what savings she had. Meanwhile, my parents were dealing with their own consequences. The family was completely fractured. My dad's parents stopped speaking to him, saying they were ashamed of how he'd handled the situation. Several of my aunts and uncles made it clear that they blamed mom and dad for what had happened. You were supposed to protect both your daughters, Aunt Linda told them during a particularly heated family gathering. Instead, you let one try to hurt the other and her baby. What kind of parents are you? The social fallout in our small town was significant too. People had seen the news coverage, and opinions were divided but passionate. Some people thought I had overreacted by calling the police and pressing charges. Others were appalled by Maxine's behavior and my parents' response. Mom lost several longtime friends who felt she had failed as a mother and a grandmother. Dad found that some of his customers were uncomfortable dealing with him, and eventually his hours were cut back significantly, reducing the family's income substantially. I'm not saying you need to quit, his boss told him, but maybe fewer hours on the floor would be better for everyone. Maxine and Vance's relationship didn't survive the stress. About a month after the incident, Vance broke up with her. He told mutual friends that he couldn't get past what he'd witnessed, and he was concerned about Maxine's mental health and anger issues. I keep thinking about how she went after Fiona's baby, he confided to one friend, who later shared this with me through a mutual connection. What if we had kids someday? Would she hurt them if she got angry enough? Maxine was devastated by the breakup, but she blamed me for that too. During one of her angry voicemails, which I saved and gave to my lawyer, she screamed that I had destroyed her entire life and that she hoped the baby would be born with problems so I would know how it felt to suffer. That voicemail was actually helpful for my civil case, as it demonstrated ongoing harassment and emotional distress. By the time my daughter Lily was born in July, my family situation had completely changed. Dexter and I had a small, beautiful wedding when Lily was 2 months old. Only Dexter's family and a few close friends attended. None of my blood relatives were there. Lily is now 8 months old, healthy and perfect. Dexter is an amazing father, and we're genuinely happy together. We bought a small house about 30 minutes away from where I grew up. My parents have tried to reconcile several times. They've called, sent letters, and even showed up at our house once. We didn't answer the door. In their messages, they claim they're sorry and that they didn't realize how serious it was at the time. But they've never actually taken responsibility for their actions. Their apologies always come with excuses: we were trying not to take sides, or Maxine was so upset about the wedding, or we thought you girls would work it out. They've never acknowledged that they stood by and watched one daughter assault another, or that they defended Maxine's right to hit me. They've never admitted that their suggestion to share the wedding was inappropriate and unfair to both Maxine and me. Maxine served her 6 months in jail and is now on probation. She lost her job and had to move back in with our parents. She's working at a retail store now, making barely above minimum wage, with most of her paycheck going to pay off the civil judgment. She sent me a few letters, but they're not really apologies. They're more like explanations of why she acted the way she did, mixed with requests for me to move past this and rebuild our family. In her most recent letter, she wrote, "I know I made mistakes, but I was under a lot of pressure with the wedding planning, and Mom and Dad's suggestion caught me off guard. I reacted badly, but I never really wanted to hurt you or the baby. Can't we just forget about this and move on? Lily should know her aunt." But here's the thing, I don't think Maxine understands what she did wrong, even now. She talks about making mistakes and reacting badly, but she doesn't acknowledge that she committed assault and battery on a pregnant woman. She doesn't seem to understand that trying to hurt an unborn baby is unforgivable. And my parents still don't get it either. In their last letter, they wrote about how the family has been torn apart by this misunderstanding and how they just want everyone to be happy again. They're still calling it a misunderstanding. The ripple effects have continued over the past 6 months. Maxine's criminal record has made it difficult for her to find good employment. Several potential employers have Googled her name and found the news coverage. She's had to move twice because landlords have done the same thing. My parents' marriage has been strained by everything that's happened. According to my cousin Jake, who still talks to them occasionally, they blame each other for how they handled the situation. Dad thinks Mom should have been more supportive of Maxine, while Mom thinks Dad should have stopped Maxine from attacking me. They've both had to deal with ongoing social consequences in their small town. They've stopped going to church because people whisper about them. Mom quit her book club because the other women made her feel uncomfortable. Dad stopped playing poker with his longtime group of friends. The financial impact on Maxine has been significant too. Between the legal fees, the civil judgment, and the loss of her good job, she's in serious financial trouble. She had to sell her car and is driving an old Honda that barely runs. She's living paycheck to paycheck and will be paying me off for years to come. But honestly, I don't feel bad about any of it. I know that might sound harsh, but I've had months to think about this, and I keep coming back to the same conclusion: actions have consequences. Maxine didn't just slap me in a moment of anger. She made a deliberate decision to try to harm my unborn child. She grabbed me, she targeted my pregnant belly, and she said she would solve the problem by getting rid of my baby. My parents didn't just fail to intervene in a sisterly squabble. They watched their oldest daughter try to hurt their youngest daughter and their grandchild, and they defended Maxine's behavior. These weren't split-second decisions or minor mistakes. These were choices that revealed fundamental character flaws and values that I can't overlook. Do I miss having a relationship with my parents and sister? Sometimes. When Lily smiles or laughs, part of me wishes my parents could see her. When she reaches developmental milestones, I occasionally think about calling Mom to share the news. But then I remember that these are the same people who thought Maxine had the right to hit me because she was angry. These are the people who suggested I give up my baby so Maxine could have her perfect wedding. Dexter has been incredibly supportive throughout everything. His family has embraced both Lily and me completely. His parents treat me like a daughter, and his sister has become one of my closest friends. Lily has grandparents who love her unconditionally and would never let anyone hurt her. I've also reconnected with some extended family members who were appalled by what happened. Aunt Linda and I are closer now than we ever were before. My cousin Jake and his wife have become like siblings to me. Grandma and Grandpa, Dad's parents, drive down once a month to see Lily and have become a wonderful presence in our lives. So while I lost my immediate family, I gained something too: clarity about who really cares about me and my child, and the confidence to set boundaries with people who don't have our best interests at heart. My business has actually grown over the past year. The stress of everything motivated me to work harder, and I've picked up several new clients. Dexter got promoted to assistant principal at his school. We're doing well financially and emotionally. Maxine, meanwhile, is still struggling. According to family gossip, she's had trouble dating because men Google her name and find the assault story. She's been to therapy as required by her probation, but apparently, she spends most of the sessions complaining about how her life was ruined rather than taking responsibility for her actions. My parents keep hoping I'll come around and forgive everyone so we can be a family again. But they don't seem to understand that forgiveness and reconciliation are two different things. I don't spend my days filled with anger or hatred toward Maxine and my parents. I've forgiven them in the sense that I'm not consumed by resentment or desire for revenge. But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to let them back into my life, especially when they haven't truly acknowledged what they did wrong or shown that they changed. The most telling moment came 4 months ago when Mom called me on Lily's first Christmas. "It's Christmas," she said, crying. "Lily should be here with her grandparents. This has gone on long enough, Fiona. We're family." "Mom," I said quietly, "do you remember what happened the last time we were all together as a family?" There was a long pause. "That was different," she finally said. "Maxine was stressed about the wedding. It got out of hand. But it's over now." "It got out of hand?" "Mom, Maxine tried to hurt my baby, and you and Dad stood there and watched. We didn't know what to do. It all happened so fast." "It didn't happen fast. You had multiple opportunities to step in. You chose not to. And afterward, you told me I should just take it because Maxine was angry." Another pause. "Well, what do you want us to do? We can't change what happened. I want you to understand what actually happened, take responsibility for your part in it, and show me that it could never happen again." "We've said we're sorry." "No, Mom. You've said you're sorry that things got out of hand. You've never acknowledged that what Maxine did was assault, or that what you and Dad did was a betrayal. You still think this was just a family argument that went too far. She hung up on me. That conversation confirmed what I already knew: my parents haven't changed. They're not sorry for what they did, they're sorry for the consequences they faced. Maxine's situation continues to deteriorate. She was recently arrested again for violating her probation by drinking alcohol. She's not supposed to drink as part of our anger management requirements. She spent a weekend in jail and now has to attend additional counseling sessions. My parents are dealing with ongoing financial pressure too. Dad's early retirement meant a significant reduction in income, and they're struggling to pay their bills. They had to take out a second mortgage on their house to pay for Maxine's legal fees, which has put significant strain on their already reduced income. But the thing that bothers them most, according to family members, is the social isolation. In a small town, everyone knows everyone else's business, and they've become social pariahs. Former friends avoid them at the grocery store. They weren't invited to several family events last year. Even their church treats them differently now. Dad told my Uncle Tom that he feels like they're being punished forever for something that wasn't even that serious. That attitude tells me everything I need to know about whether they've learned anything from this experience. Meanwhile, Dexter and I are thriving. We're talking about buying a bigger house and maybe having another baby in a few years. Lily is healthy and happy, surrounded by people who love her unconditionally. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I hadn't called 911 that night. Would Maxine have actually hurt my baby? Would my parents have ever stood up to her? Would this pattern of enabling and favoritism have continued indefinitely? I'll never know for sure, but I'm glad I made the choice I did. Calling the police was the hardest thing I'd ever done up to that point, but it was also the most important. It sent a clear message: I will protect my child from anyone who tries to hurt her, even if that person is family. It established boundaries that I should have set years ago. And it forced everyone to face consequences for their actions instead of just sweeping everything under the rug like we'd always done in our family. Some people have told me I was too harsh, that I should have handled it within the family. But those people weren't there. They didn't see the look in Maxine's eyes when she targeted my pregnant belly. They didn't hear my parents defending her right to hit me. They didn't live through years of being treated as the lesser daughter. Others have told me I'm brave for standing up for myself and my baby. I don't know about brave, but I know I did what I had to do. As I finish writing this story, Lily is napping in her crib, and Dexter is grading papers at the kitchen table. We have a peaceful, loving home filled with people who respect and care for each other. We have in-laws who would move heaven and earth to protect Lily. We have friends who support us unconditionally. I lost the family I was born into, but I gained the family I chose. And honestly, I think Lily and I are much better off this way. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who don't know how to love you properly. Sometimes protecting your child means cutting ties with your own parents. Sometimes calling the police on your sister is the only way to keep your baby safe. These aren't easy decisions, but they were the right decisions. And 6 months later, I have no regrets about the choice I made that terrible night in my parents' kitchen. My family asked me to share my sister's wedding with her, and when I couldn't do it on their terms, they stood by while she tried to hurt my unborn child. So I called 911 and left their lives in ruins. But really, they left their own lives in ruins the moment they decided that one daughter's anger was more important than the other daughter's safety. I just made sure there were consequences for that choice.